Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Okay, citizens of the world, all of you out there listening in or viewing live from the Heartland for the week of June 12th, I'm still Michael James. I'm here with my co-host, Euan Hague. And it really brings me a lot of pleasure to bring on three people, two of them whom I don't know, but I'm looking forward to hearing from them. I do know Jay Schaffner, who used to be in Chicago. He came out of Skokie. He was a political guy. And he moved to New York, and along with Geoffrey or Jacques, how do you do that? Geoffrey Jacques. Geoffrey Jacques, that's pretty easy. And yep. Carol Pittman, they are the editors of a new book called Red Lives, Our Years in the Communist Party, 1950 to 2000. And when I saw about the book, I said, I think they'd make some good guests. I had grown up in a town where there were certainly some left-wing people, probably in the party. I had a roommate at Berkeley whose father was a commissar in the Lincoln Brigade and the head of the Communist Party in Michigan, Saul Wellman. His son David was my roommate.
Oh, I knew Saul.
Well, I met Saul. I got a nice picture of him and Davy. But, at Berkeley, I learned a lot of things. I remember the W.E.B. Du Bois tables out there during the free speech movement. Why don't you, one of the three of you, tell us a little bit about this project that you took on, which is immense, I think.
There's a lot of books about the Communist Party that are out. Most of the histories of the Communist Party end around 1955, 1957, that the party died. The party didn't die. People joined the party. The party continued to exist. And there are many books about the left. You've had many people on your show, Mike, who came out of the left, were part of the left. That's where I met you in Join and in Rising Up Angry, in SDS. I remember you on Madison Avenue in the SDS headquarters. But many of us felt that a book needed to be written about the Communist Party after 1955, after 1957. And we felt that while people were still alive, that we should get them to write about why they joined. What made them join the Communist Party? What did they do as members of the Communist Party? What do they feel they accomplished? So we got in touch with about 500 people that we personally knew, and 50 people wrote along those lines. And we are publishing 3 volumes. The first one is out that has memoirs of 16 people. It focuses on people whose family were red diaper babies, people who grew up in families that were in the party, and people who were active in the labor movement. And I'll stop at that point. And it's taken us 10 years to work on this project, contacting people, working with them on their articles, memoirs, finding a publisher, and getting it out.
Why don't we talk a little bit about the Communist Party itself, how long it was around, who was involved, what it did. You know, I was thinking about it this morning. I remembered the role that the CP played in bringing about integration in baseball with Jackie Robinson. And, you know, the communists did a lot of really good stuff, but they always took a lot of heat. And fill us in a little bit about some of the history of the party, how it evolved, and how it ended up today. I mean, I know there is a party office down on 35th Street here in Chicago. I know some people who are involved, and it would be really great to tie some of these things together.
Well, the party started in 1919 after the split in the Socialist Party over the war World War I and after the Bolshevik Revolution. And the people who took inspiration from the Bolshevik Revolution formed the Communist Party. That's a short version of the story. It's actually, of course, a lot more complicated than that. The party spent the 20s, it seems, mostly in sort of trying to create itself, which by the late 20s, it sort of formed became the organization that most people talk about when they look at histories and so on. And during the Depression and World War II, it became a fairly important factor in U.S. politics until the Cold War began in earnest in 1947, the domestic Cold War. And you had then the prosecution by the federal government of dozens of Communist Party activists and leaders. Over 100 people were put on trial by the federal government. And that was part of the overall Cold War architecture, which snared millions of people in its net. One estimate in the mid-50s said that there were 2 million working people who were under the sort of security network of the Cold War repressions. FBI would come to your place of work, tell your boss you signed this petition, you're a threat to the very existence of the United States and all that kind of stuff. And so the party, Jay can talk a lot about the party's underground history and all of that, but it went through a very bad time in the 50s. And with the death of Stalin and the emergence of Khrushchev and the report of Khrushchev's speech at the 20th Congress, his so-called secret speech, which the whole world knew within hours of its secrecy, sort of fractured the communist movement. And out of that, you get a smaller organization, but nonetheless one that still exists, as you said, and which then began to it didn't really ever grow again to its former size, but it did manage in the 60s and 70s, and this is what our book points to. It did manage to house a significant number of radicals who were active in the social movements and trade union movements and civil rights movements of the day. And our book talks about the party members in those movements, during that period.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about what went on in that period. I mean, what most people hear about is blacklisting in Hollywood, that kind of thing, and the Red Scare. That was really ingrained into a lot of us that growing up in the 50s, 40s, and 50s. What were some of the things that people were doing post McCarthy and post that period of, going after everybody, trying to make good changes in the world, being called a communist?
Well, you mentioned the Du Bois tables, and the W.B. Du Bois Club was a significant enough early 60s, mid 60s actually youth organization that it not only got the attention of the government but also got attention in the press. When we were editing these things, and you see that some of our contributors talk about that. They talk about their life in the Du Bois Club. And when I was checking out because I was doing some of the editing and I was looking, sort of fact checking some things. And, it was very clear that in places where they were active, especially in California, but in other places too, they were a significant factor. So there was that. But mostly it was really, I think, it's kind of hard to characterize, really, and we don't really characterize it much in the book. I mean, for us, our project has to do with, talking about how people were active in these movements. But I will say one thing that, and this is again only alluded to in the book, although one of our editors has written a very fine study of this. The movement to free Angela Davis was a really significant measure, I think, of the kind of activity party members were involved in and how they created really larger movements that were much larger than themselves, And
global, really, that was a global, international movement.
Right.
Yeah.
It was global. It was international. It was all over the press. You remember, it was like a season of Angela Davis. Well, that wasn't spontaneous. Some of it was spontaneous, but the spark of it wasn't. And there's a very fine book by Bettina Aptheker on the trial of Angela Davis, which you might have read, The Morning Breaks, where she talks a little bit about the organization of the movement. And one of our editors, Daniel Rosenberg, who's a historian, also has a very fine, lengthy article, which you can find fairly easily online, about that movement. And so if you want to know kind of where, how, you want to know examples, that's one example of the movement of the party, what the party, created and how it worked.
When I was doing a little research for today, I learned that Jay had left the party at a certain point, and I don't know about Jeff and Carol if you all did too. And I'm just wondering if you would like to share with our viewers and listeners why you left the party, and we'll start with that.
Okay, I was education director in the district of the party. And we had a real hard time with the leadership of the party. We had a hard time organizing. We had a hard time doing the work that we did, the day-to-day work in our communities and our places of work, because there were constant obstacles put in our way, that we were ideologically wrong, that we needed to give out the paper more, that we needed to do things that differently. And there was a pretty big struggle in California and New York for sure, but also in other places to try to change the direction of the party. And in the book, you will see that there are many mentions of the initiative, which was a document that was created and signed by 1,200 comrades across the country, basically pointing to what needed to be done to make the party functional and moving, an organization that could help the working class with struggle with class consciousness, could go out and build the organizations that we all participated in. And that didn't work. Nothing worked. And so we had come up against a brick wall. So I left with a large number of comrades from the New York district. We left after much struggle around trying to get the leadership of the party, headed by Gus Hall, to listen, to move. When Gorbachev came out, and said we need to, with Glasnost and Perestroika, let's look at what we've been doing, let's restructure, let's have an open discussion about what we've done well and what we need to redo. It was like a breath of fresh air, except that the party leadership came down like a ton of bricks and there was no movement. So what are you going to do as a communist, as a trade unionist, as a member of the community, you leave so that you can do what you need to do.
What year was this, Carol?
What year was it, Jay?
1991.
The end of 91.
And what was Portside? Because I still see that sometimes. I used to get emails, but fill us in on what happened after some of you left the party. What happened to the party, and where is it at now, if you have information on that?
Well, I don't really have information. The party still is around. It still exists. There are some people who are still in the party. A number of people who left the party at the end of 91, in the summer of 92, formed an organization called the Committees of Correspondence for Democracy and Socialism. The problem with that is that it opened itself up to socialists of all kinds, which was a very good thing. But the problem was that people who came out of the party, many of them, while they left the party didn't leave them. And what I mean by that is they continued to function as if some of them continued to function as if they were still in the party. But the majority of the people who were in the committees, there was no common, quote, strategy. There was no common program. And there was for lack of a better word, a suspicion of people who came from a left background other than what their left background was. The committees still exist. One of the things that came out of the committees was Portside. Portside was a news service of the left. It has continued since the year 2000. Today it has some 50,000 subscribers. It's viewed by many more thousands on the web. It's been in existence 26 years. It has a much larger circulation, and it's considered a reputable source of the left and of the socialist current. So I think one of the things of the socialist movement is that the socialist movement is a current on the left. It is not the totality of the left. And that was one of the big differences at the end in terms of why many of us left the party. That the party tried to substitute itself for the left. And that's still a current within today's socialist movement, that it is the be-all and end-all. I don't think the socialist movement is the be-all and end-all of the left. I think it is a part of and an important part of the left. But it has to build a left that is bigger than the socialist current, and it has to build a movement that is bigger than the left itself. And it has to be willing to work with people who are non-left to bring about an end to Trump and to bring about an end to fascist danger in our country. And that means working with non-left people on possibly sometimes we don't agree on many things, but we have to agree that there's a need to prevent a fascist turn in our country.
What do you say about the building a kind of, I mean, what I think you're talking about is that we've got to build a kind of united front of people of different persuasions. We might have to lower our standards, so to speak, or our hopes and dreams. But we are certainly in a crucial space in this country. None of us foresaw this, I don't think. We always knew there was a fascist underbelly, a racist underbelly. We didn't know that it could be triggered to become so dominant. What is your take on, any of you, your take on working with other groups these days? I know some of you are in the Working Families Party. Any of you want to share a little bit about where you think we're at now and what we need to do? We certainly know the world is in turmoil. We know that there's a lot of negativity out there, but there's also a lot of response and a lot of people going forward and talking about a new day and showing up at events. There seems to be an emergence of a lot of concern and desire to participate in making things different. How about what you all think?
Well, I actually think it's a particularly strange moment, right? Because we have the fascist ascendancy, and whether or not that has reached where the limits of that are, we don't know at the moment. But what is encouraging is that the operational fascist ascendancy is not joined with a kind of mass support element. Not only is Trump's approval ratings at historic lows, but I keep pointing out to people that one of the things we've seen over the last 6 months or so is with Trump's operation, whatever he calls that, the anti-immigrant surge, is that when the ICE agents go places, they're not met with crowds of supporters. Almost nowhere do we have mass crowds of supporters for this operation. We have exactly the opposite, no matter where they go. And I think that's a very significant thing. I think it's just really significant. Phenomenal things are happening within this moment of fraught moment. Ken Paxton's defense lawyer comes out for James Tallarico. You can't make that up.
That was a good one.
If you tried to write that in a movie, they'd throw you out the door, right? But there it is. And I saw a piece of it yesterday because he broadcast. They made a video of it, of the guy talking with James Tallarico. And, it's really an amazing thing to see. I don't know if that means he'll win the election, but it's certainly a very strong indicator that the right wing's efforts are faltering. That doesn't mean they're over, doesn't mean they can't still come back, but it does mean that they're faltering. And I think those are very good things. The second thing, which is related to the first, is we have the revival of socialist politics in the country at a level that we've not seen, certainly not in my lifetime. In the book, I open my essay, which is the first essay in the book. I open it by remembering when I first saw a Communist Party election advertisement on the side of a bus, and how that just kind of freaked me out. I mean, I didn't, it was just a wholly unexpected thing. But now, we have the mayor of New York City and members of Congress and members of state legislatures and people openly running as members of the Democratic Socialists of America for all kinds of offices. I'm in Michigan now, and the very likely, he's leading in the polls now. Abdul El Sayed, who's a doctor and a public health advocate, who's a member of Democratic Socialists of America, he's running for the U.S. Senate. And if he gets the nomination, he will likely win it because the Republicans have put up a candidate who I think cannot win elections. He lost Alyssa Slotkin when in 24 when he was running for the Senate. And that was when Trump won Michigan by 80,000 votes. Some of those people voted for Trump and for Slotkin, I think. So, we're living in a moment where we have a mass socialist movement. We have a revival of socialist politics. And thirdly, an awareness of what you're talking about, that we need a broad democratic movement in order not just to defeat Trump, but in order to move on the democratic and if dare I say it, social democratic even measures that have become increasingly popular, and to the point now where people are running for public office at the highest level and putting at the front of their platform Medicare for all. That's a very good thing. So,
Euan, why don't you?
No, I was just going to say we'll probably get you back on the show to talk about Volume 2. Could you tell us a little bit about what's going to be in Volume 2 of this multi-volume project, Red Lives, Our Years in the U.S. Communist Party?
Well, Volume 2 will be out probably the end of October, November of this year. And the focus of Volume 2 is primarily on the youth and student movement. And Mike started the segment talking about being on the Berkeley campus. One of the photos in Volume 1 is a photo of a Du Bois Club literature table on the Berkeley campus. And there is one of the segments in Volume 1 is Joe Harris talking about the Du Bois Club at Berkeley. There's a longer piece in Volume 2 by Jack Rady about the Du Bois Club at Berkeley. Volume 3 will be out next year, and it's talking about communists, people working for the party, communists working in political movements as communists, working full time. So the total will be 50 essays, and you can go to Punctum Books on the website. There's a link on Punctum Books where people can buy the book, but also at Punctum Books, you can download a free copy of the book.
Hallelujah.
So there's two ways of getting the book. And again, here is what the book looks like. And we will send you a visual of the book.
All right. I want to thank the three of you for coming on. That would be Jay Schaffner, Jeff Jacques, and Carol Pittman. And I look forward to having you back on the show. There's a lot of work for all of us to do. I'm glad we're all still at it.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
thank you.
All right.
Thank you.